Today you join me in San Francisco, California, and it is a bit of a dreary, rainy day. However, what's not dreary is this brand new, all-new Mazda CX-90 that we finally get out on the road and drive. And we're not only driving the plug-in hybrid variant, but we're also driving the most powerful car in the lineup, the turbo inline 6. So let's get into what makes this car special. Compared to the outgoing Mazda CX-9, this is a much more modern exterior. Of course, it just came out, so you would expect that. We've got big 21-inch wheels, and this is actually a 7-inch longer wheelbase compared to the CX-9, slightly shorter front overhang and a slightly longer rear overhang, but overall, it's just a much more modern and sharp-looking car. As part of this video, I also want to figure out what is the driving range on the plug-in hybrid in its EV mode in a real-world setting. Now, Mazda USA hasn't confirmed any official figure, but according to what we've seen from a Canadian press release, should be about 23 miles, which is, in theory, enough for you to do possibly your daily commute. So we're going to figure it out. We have the trip odometer reset. We're in the EV mode, and we're going to do a mix of driving, a little bit of city driving like what we're doing now, and a little bit of highway driving, and then we'll find out. This plug-in hybrid does have a 17.8 kilowatt hour battery. It's not a massive battery, but it is decent size, and in this EV mode, the car is eerily quiet. It's very, very calm. I'm trying to accelerate fairly gingerly so that it stays in the EV mode. If you throttle it hard enough, it will kick on the gas engine, but we want to see what it's going to do on all electric. So a little check-in here at about 50% on the battery. We've gone 13.3 miles now and climbing, and that's pretty good, better than what we were expecting, and especially impressive considering that we've primarily been doing highway driving here, which is not the easiest thing for the EV part of a powertrain because you're just constantly pushing wind. You're not really doing a lot of regenning. So yeah, at now just below 50% battery and almost 14 miles. We'll see what that ends up being when we complete this leg of our journey, but that's a good number. All right, we are roundabout empty on the gauge, which means the gas motor should be kicking on. Now, I was wondering if the gas motor was going to kick on when the battery gauge showed. Oh, yep, and there we go. It just changed over. So, EV mode cancel, and that was 26.7 miles. It now says 26.8. So we actually did better than what was estimated, what we had heard, and that's impressive because, like I've been saying, we've been doing pretty much all highway driving at high speed, not being able to regen, stop and go, and you get nearly as much go as you get with the Turbo S, which is pretty nice. Stepping into this second row of seats, we have captain's chairs. Now, there's a lot of different configurations that you can get with this new CX-90, anything from a 6-seater to an 8-seater. They also have a 7-seater configuration. Now, this is the 6-seater configuration. It's 222, but of course you can get 223 or 233. Now, sitting in the captain's chair version of this back row of seats is actually really comfortable, and you can slide this seat around just a little bit. You can also bring it forward, recline it, and when you're all the way back and reclined, you have good amount of headroom, good amount of leg room. I'm only 5'10", not really tall or short, I guess, but I'm very comfortable back here. You also have some good amenities, vents, USB-C ports, which is nice. That's the port that everything is going to, so always happy to see that. We have our own climate in this really high-end trim. We also have heated and ventilated seats for the rear seat passenger, which is all fantastic to have. A couple cup holders here and in the door. And I even have my own storage cubby here, although maybe my favorite little luxury feature for getting comfortable back here is the fact that we do have a manual shade to put up for the window. But we also have to see how the third row of seats is, and it's always a little awkward getting into the backs of these third row seats. But once we're back here, there's not tons and tons of room for me to put my feet, but overall, I mean, even if the person in front of me were to lean back a little bit and slide back a little bit, I still have knee room, I still have head room, and I also have another USB-C port back here. There's one on each side. I've got 2 cup holders, and look at that. I've even got a vent as a rear seat passenger. So if you're sitting in the third row of this, it's one of the more comfortable third rows I've been in, one of the more well-equipped. This is actually not a bad place to sit, even as an adult. Opening up the back of this CX-90, of course, we have a power liftgate, especially on this very premium model, and not tons and tons of space here when the third row is folded up, but it's easy enough to grab these straps, fold the seats down, and then you have a great amount of space to put your things. And it is worth mentioning that this car does have a compact spare tire back here. Not a full size, but at least it has a spare tire at all. It's getting more and more common that cars these days don't have any kind of spare tire, so to find a car that does have one is still really nice. By the way, this particular interior and the way that it's spec'd is phenomenal. And some of the materials here, like this suede type of material, also the two-tone on the steering wheel, is really pretty incredible. I also love that 12.3 inch screen that you get both in front of the driver as well as in the center here. I mean, this system is not the easiest one in the industry to navigate, but it's also far from the worst. If you get one of the lower trim versions of this car, you'll have a 10.25 inch screen in the center and a 7-inch screen in front of you. But these screens are really, really sharp. And again, just in terms of design and materials, this is a stellar setup for the interior. And a real shifter. One that you actually physically move. It's not a rotary dial. We also have a selector here to go through the different driving modes, and you've got just a few different modes: sport, normal, and off-road. If you get one of the plug-in hybrids, you also have an EV setting, but as you can see, when you switch through these different modes, the instrument cluster changes its appearance, and it does so in a really cool way. Manufacturers tend to do this with their different drive modes to varying degrees of success, but I think the way that Mazda has laid out these gauges in the different modes works really well. Also, these are things that are relatively minor, but look at the way that each 3 sections of this vent on the side pivot individually. It's a really cool thing to look at and feel the way that it works, and also the fact that they included some of this suede even on this small section on the other side of the gauge cluster. A lot of really good attention to detail here. Now we're behind the wheel of what seems to me to be the top of the line. It's at least the most powerful version of the CX-90. This is a Turbo S. So 340 horsepower, 369 pound-feet of torque. And it's a really nice powertrain. The funny thing is, so if you stay in this powertrain, and the Mazda team was talking about this, if you stay in the powertrain is what they're calling delayed gratification, so that power actually builds the longer you stay in it, versus the plug-in hybrid gives you a nice whip right when you stick your foot in it. This kind of has a nice crescendo, a build to it, which is actually pretty entertaining, and it makes a decent noise. Now, like I said, 340 horsepower, 369 pound-feet of torque in this, so it's only 17 more horsepower, and it's the same torque figure. If you get the base version of this powertrain, which mechanically is the same as this, it's just not as highly strung, and it runs on standard fuel, so it is going to be less expensive to run on 87. If you get the standard version of this powertrain, just the regular turbo, the starting powertrain at lower trim levels, that's 280 horsepower, 332 pound-feet torque. So that's a whole 60 horsepower down from this model. And yeah, the power on this Turbo S feels pretty good. I'm enjoying it. It's nice. I mean, this is not incredibly fast. It's not like something along the lines of a Trackhawk or anything that ridiculous, but Mazda makes cars in general that are really nice to drive, and this is no exception. The steering is definitely a little dead. It's got weight to it, but that weight doesn't really change depending on how you're driving, how you're loading up the tires. And the brake feedback, it's not as smooth as what we're used to in some other Mazda products, but overall, this is honestly a really phenomenal car to drive. Something else that's worth mentioning about this inline six-cylinder 48-volt hybrid powertrain is that it has a new Mazda-made transmission. So this isn't a ZF transmission or anything. The 8-speed that's in this car is something that they developed, and it doesn't use a traditional torque converter like most automatic transmissions. So that's part of the reason that they were able to package this inline six. They were able to move the engine slightly further back, which allows for better weight distribution, better handling, but it also gives them room up front to create crumple zones. It allows them to package an inline six, which is cool because fewer and fewer cars these days have an inline six, and an inline six turbo is a really phenomenal engine configuration. And if you want to see a deeper dive into everything there is to know about this powertrain, check out the video that we did with Jay Chen, that is the powertrain engineer for this car, to learn all about why they chose an inline six and what are some of the pros and cons between this and all of the other different powertrain options for the CX-90. In closing, we also have to talk about pricing and availability. In terms of availability, Mazda has said that these will be available in the spring and at spring, so we should expect to see these very soon. And in terms of pricing, they start at $39,595. But if you want one of the plug-in hybrid versions, that's going to bring you up to a minimum of $47,445. And then if you want to go up to one of the Turbo S models like this with more power, that's going to start at $51,750, but you can spec them all the way above $60,000. And if it were my money, it's a tough call because they do get on the expensive side, but these higher-end interiors are really phenomenal, and I do love this inline six. While it's nice to have electrified driving, the experience of driving this inline six is a little bit better for the enthusiast, and the fuel economy numbers on this aren't that bad. It's 24 miles per gallon in the city, 28 miles per gallon on the highway, and 25 combined. And if you get the Turbo S, it drops the city down to 23, but those numbers really aren't all that bad considering the size of this vehicle. And another nice thing is that this has 5,000 pounds tow rating versus 3,500 on the plug-in hybrid. So depending on your use case, depending on what you want to do with a machine like this, that's probably going to dictate which model you get. But this one, the inline six Turbo S premium model, is really my favorite. So let me know what you think down in the comments below, and we'll catch you all in the next video.